After the fire was put out and everything finally got calmed down, we gave Max a proper burial. My dad and mother had their insurance company come out. The company did their insurance stuff and put us in a motel while everything on their part was being cleaned up. During the time that we were in the motel, which was about 5 to 6 days, my dad and his friends began to make preparations to build the new house. Dad bought us a camper to live in while the house was being rebuilt. Altogether, it took about 3 months to rebuild it. He had it built the exact way our old house was built, with the exception of not having Max anymore. The new house was great, but I eventually had another dog, and though he was not the same type of dog as Max was, he was wonderful. We named him Sergeant. During the time of the rebuilding of our house, my father poured blood, sweat, and tears in the manufacturing of his castle, he called it. He would have on average of about 3 to 4 of his friends and me help him. Of course, the fact of my helping was just considerable labor, I might add. I, for one, am not ignorant of hard labor, and that is an example of many good traits that my father has helped me build on. Then, of course, after all the work was done, we had to furnish and do much painting. At some point during the process of getting the house completed, my dad and his buddies helped him build me a treehouse. The treehouse was put up in the same tree as the tire swing, since the tree was of great size. After it was done, I did a little work to it myself. Now I was ready for my friends to come over ASAP. Of course, now that school has started back, it has to be on the weekends, and I have to have no work to do that was given to me by my dad. Oh, and summer school was fun. I and almost every one of my friends are ready for school to start back, but we actually have about 2 weeks left of summer break. Moving ahead a little, once school began, it reminded me of a day that comes every year that I absolutely love, my birthday. I'll finally be the Big 10. Dad told me the weekend of my birthday that I could have a sleepover with my friends in my treehouse, and I was so excited. Once that I asked my friends to come, I realized that I sure do have some great people in my life. A mom, a dad who love me and support me, and friends who truly want to be around me, and of course, my dog, Sergeant. For these next few weeks that I wait for the big day in the treehouse, I and my friends, while at school, would chit-chat about what we wanted to do. One friend suggested that we tell ghost stories, and the other friend suggested that we played board games all night. We decided that we would do both. And then at some point later on, we would decide to do other things. On a given day after school was over and the bus dropped me off, I decided to run down to the treehouse to do my homework. Passing by my dad as I ran as fast as I could, he had a big smile on his face and just waved at me as I passed by. I climbed up the ladder, pulling myself through an open hole in the floor. I sat down and got started on my homework, the whole time thinking that my birthday party was just in a few days. While I was doing my homework, I could hear faint tapping outside. It sounded like it was coming from the front deck of the treehouse. I set my school book down, stepped outside, and looked around, but saw nothing. Until I looked down and I saw that there were 3 dead birds just out of the blue laying there. I kicked them off the deck and would tell Dad about them later. I sat down and finished my homework. Later on, as I was climbing back down the tree to go back up to the house, I began to walk, and I kept hearing light thuds around me. I stopped, turned around, and saw more birds just laying on the ground dead. I ran up to the house and yelled for my dad. "What is it, son?" Dad asked. "There are a bunch of dead birds over here that seem to just fall out of the sky at the same time," I said. Dad told me to stay there and he would go have a look. A few minutes later, he came walking back up to me and said, "What birds?" "Just down there," I told him. So we went back down there together to only see what I feared. Absolutely nothing. Dad told me that I was just spooked because I was in the new tree house out by myself, and as I just thought I saw something. Well, I didn't agree with him about this, seeing that there were no birds on the ground that were dead. So I guess maybe the fact that I was being anxious about my birthday and being spooked at the same time made sense. I told myself, "Oh well, Alan, just get some rest." So we walked back up together to the house. On the way, my father said he would go down to the treehouse with me tomorrow to give me some company, since I was down there practically every day since it was built. The next day when in school, my friend Scotty during lunch asked if he could come over in that evening and just stay the night, since the party was the next day. I told him I would ask once I was home. Then if my parents were okay with it, we would camp out in the treehouse. Scotty thought this was a good idea. Later that evening, my dad and I went to get Scotty. We were about to have one heck of a weekend, or so we thought. On this evening, which was Friday, Scotty and I carried everything down to the treehouse, which was board games, puzzles, playing cards, etc. You know, the normal stuff. Be ready for everyone tomorrow. That night at about 8:30 or so, my mom came down to the treehouse to check on us. She climbs up the ladder and through the hole in the floor and sits down. She asked if we're having fun yet. We both said yes. And right at the time that we responded to her, there was a knock at the door that leads out to the deck of the treehouse. We could tell that Mom was super spooked, but then she also giggled as she stood and said, "I'll get it, it's probably just your dad." Though I knew in my head the only way to get to the deck was from inside. She's laughing while she's opening the door, and well, there's nobody there. She peeks out and takes a look and still sees nobody. "Oh, it was probably just a branch that fell and bounced off the door," she said. She closes the door and tells us good night and would see us on the morning. The next morning, bright and early, let's just say that I was beyond excited. Not even counting Scotty, but 9 of my other friends showed up, and of course all the family that could come. We did the normal meet and greet with everyone, introducing the family to my friends. The party was a complete success. Mom and Dad asked us boys to help get everything cleaned up, and then we could get going with our outside activities. Well, since it was only afternoon, then we would have plenty of time. Then off to the treehouse later that night. It was to be one of the best birthdays yet, and that is at least what we thought.